Yeah.
And here's what I'm worried about is that if I understand why and I get there, I'm still attracted.
Mm-hmm.
I still want, I still desire these people who I get in this pattern with and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Am I doomed to be alone, Greg?
Yeah, but there's other...
All right, and welcome to Tyler Is Groce Podcast with me, Tyler Groce. I talk to my very successful friends about life and success and struggle and what you're doing, what you're working on, what you're doing to improve yourself, to live a better life. Also that I can take that knowledge and beat them at whatever it is they're doing. So that is what this is. We got Greg James on today. I'm very excited about Greg James coming back from a little bit of a hiatus, had a little 3-week vacay. Went to Texas to see the Texas homies, went to Barcelona to see my brother. So it's been an international vacay for old Tyler. I'm feeling good. Good to be back. I'm glad to show you my friend, Dr. Greg James. Very interesting conversation. He's like a psychiatrist. And then he which is pills. You give out pills and prescriptions, but then he also loves therapy too, and he's trained in that. So he gives a little bit of therapy, gives a little bit of pills. He didn't give me any pills. He gave me some free therapy on this episode, so you can check that out. But it was a real interesting conversation. Greg's an interesting guy, funny comic in Austin, Texas. So check him out. Go on his Instagram. I think it's All Tired. See, these are the things I should know ahead of time. These are really the things I should know ahead of time. But its Instagram is, like I said, my boy Greg James. It is Greg James. Greg James all_tired. Boom, tired. Because he's a sleepy boy. He got a kid. I met his baby, made her cry. I think I was her first black. I think that might have been why. But what are you going to do? We're scary. What are you going to do? But it was a fun conversation. He's a good dude. Had a lot of interesting things to say from a clinical perspective. It's very cool. So you'll enjoy the episode. Check out the website for whenever I'm performing, tylerisgroce.com, TJ Groce on the gram. You can see everything. There's a link tree. It's all on there. It's all under the description of whatever you're looking at it on. So hit me up, email me. Why not? Say something nice to me. Say something mean to me. I don't care. I'll take anything. If you take the time out of your day to shit on me, I'm honored. But yeah, it's good to be back. I hope you're listening. I hope you're having a good life, improving yourself, trying to better yourself, and hopefully this can be something you listen to along the way. So Greg James, check it out. You're gonna love it. Enjoy. Okay, we did it. Now we can start.
Yeah.
Oh man, what a production. I think this is the first time I've brought it anywhere.
Oh really? I thought you were mobile this whole time.
I mean, I would go to my ex's house, so that was I'd stay there, so that was a new home base, or
all right.
I would do it in New York, and that's the only 2 places I did it.
Oh, okay. But obviously you had one place in New York.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big city.
Yeah. But people are willing to move. People are willing to come to me.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Which I'm surprised about. I'm
that's really nice.
I wouldn't. I would try to, because I even offer. I'm I can. It's mobile. I can move.
Yeah.
I can go wherever we need to go. And they're no, we'll just come to you. I'm respect. These people are cool.
Yeah, I'd assumed you were just being super generous by coming here instead of asking me to meet you somewhere.
No, doesn't sound like me. No. Super generous? No, that's not me. That's not me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, because I'm staying at my friend's place, and then there's a roommate, and then I could have negotiated, but then I'm I'm already in their space.
You're asking a lot.
Yeah, I don't want to ask too much. I don't want to be a bad guest.
Yeah.
So I decided to be a bad podcast host and make you move.
Come on, yeah.
Welcome to your garage.
Very little. Well, no, the treadmill's the biggest.
Yeah.
I haven't moved that thing in a year and a half.
Do you use it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ran a half marathon last month.
What?
And sometimes you have to train on days where it's raining too hard or the town freezes, and you still have to keep running because you don't want to die running.
Why did you do a half marathon?
I
hate running.
I'm impulsive.
That's not
when it comes to
doing a half marathon is not impulsive. You trained.
Well, I decided impulsively while I was driving home from work that I want to run a very long race, and then I texted my wife and said, "Hey, I want to run like a marathon or a half marathon at least. What do you wanna?" And she's so nice. She said, "Yeah." But this happened to me years ago where I saw a flyer for a mini triathlon, and I said, "I'll do it." That one I was really poorly trained for. Like I ran a lot at the time, but I
swimming and
I don't know how to swim well enough to do that.
Because you got to be like a swimmer.
You have to be.
I can go to Schlitterbahn.
Yeah, right. I can stay afloat.
I can go in a wave pool.
Yeah.
I can tread water until I'm tired and then get one of the donuts and then I can rest on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I used to commute on a bike from like my neighborhood to like bars downtown and back in Albuquerque. But I wouldn't ride through the mountains for 12, 13 miles. So I rode for almost 13 miles through the mountains as the first part. And then the second part's the swim. And I had never ridden a bike that hard before. So when I jumped into the water, I couldn't move like normal. So I just started sinking, and I was like,
"Why didn't you just your legs?"
My legs, when I was trying to walk, my legs still felt like I was pedaling still. So I was probably walking in a really odd way, in a more circular manner than I usually do. And I could feel my legs kind of being locked in that motion because it was hard and all new. And then I jump into this pool 14 feet deep on one end, trying to get back up. And then I just I think this is breaststroke. I think somebody said that.
Is that one?
Oh, I thought that was the butterfly.
I thought butterfly was backwards.
Butterfly is backwards?
No, I guess backwards is backstroke.
Backwards is backstroke.
Breaststroke is...
Breaststroke?
I don't know what butterfly... I don't know. Don't listen to me. Don't listen. I don't know anything.
I mean, butterflies...
You were in a triathlon and I'm like, no, that's not breaststroke.
Let me tell you something.
I don't think so. I was at Schlitterbahn. That's not breaststroke.
Yeah. You might see somebody going hard doing a butterfly out there. A Tootsie Roll. So I just struggled, and then I placed last.
Wow.
Not for the entire race, but for all the men my age, pretty bad. But I had no intention of competing with people
you completed it.
But I completed it,
and was an impulse. That sounds like an impulsive.
That was way more impulsive because. Yeah. But it seemed less threatening than even the half marathon.
How was the half? Was that hard?
It was awful.
Do you like running?
I've come to like it. I've hated it.
Do you get this runner's high I hear about? I don't believe in it.
I don't believe in it. I ran 13 miles and still didn't feel good for any of it.
It never kicked in.
No, but I
think they're lying. I was talking to Ashley Sharma about that.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, it's the best high. It's the best high. You just got to go 4 or 5 miles and trust me, it'll be there." And you're like, "No." There's a genetic defect that we might share.
I don't know.
But I've never given it a chance at all.
Yeah.
You do have to work for the runner's high. I've never put in the effort.
True. Maybe I'm just not working hard because I'm like running at a relatively slow pace because you have to keep going. And if I ran harder, maybe that's the secret. Because I feel like Ashley runs like 4 or 5 miles. Like she does like 5Ks, I think. So and maybe I'm selling her short. Maybe she runs way longer, but I feel like you run harder and faster on those because you don't have to go for 2 to 3 hours at a time, which by the time I got to mile 10, the remaining 3 felt infinite, like they just wouldn't end. Yeah. And but there was like a 2 mile stretch where it was almost all gradually going uphill.
I don't like that.
And that's kind of when I got separated from the big pack. And so I was just kind of like on my own.
Does that feel awful? You seeing the pack and you're like, God, I can't, I'm not, no. I should have trained.
Right. I gave myself 3 months, not even 3 whole months to get ready, which
Are you talking about this is for the
half marathon? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, watching the pack go away, I've never been a good runner, so it was really more of like, oh yeah, this is familiar. Mm-hmm. This is what running is usually like for me. When I go running in my neighborhood, there's hardly anybody else out there running my route. So if somebody runs by me,
so you're in first place.
I'm always in first place. No one knows.
You're always like, this feels right.
This is my route, which is a thing I tell my patients in therapy. We pick our route and then we run it, and we don't let anybody else tell us where to go.
This is a
therapeutic term.
This is a metaphor.
It's a metaphor. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
It's more of a school bus metaphor, but it works for running too. I like to flex my metaphors probably too far. Yeah. To the point where they don't make sense anymore. Yeah. And
you double, triple. It's like, It's like comparing apples and oranges. 2 in the hand. One in the bird.
One in your neighbor's house. Something like that.
Don't throw that glass stone.
Exactly, because
don't throw the glass stone. That's what
don't upset your uncle.
What age are you therapizing?
A whole wide variety. I've worked with folks in their early 20s through their 60s.
So I've recently been looking into a therapist, right?
Okay.
And I was like, let me get an old white lady, because she's a lady. I like women, and she's old, so she's done this shit.
Maybe.
I assume. Yeah. That she's been in the game for a bit.
I mean,
But you're in the game. How long have you been in the game?
Properly
dealing with clients.
Doing therapy or working with people with mental illness.
What's the difference? What have you?
I started doing
therapy.
I started doing therapy in 2020.
Okay.
I've been working with patients with mental illness a year prior to that. Mm-hmm. During my first year of training, you don't really do therapy in the way that we all think of it, in sitting down for at least like an hour and talking. Yeah. You can do things that are therapeutic, but they are with talking. But to do real therapy, it's been like 2 years.
Okay.
Or no, I'm almost done with my third year of psychotherapy training.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, which is.
So how do you? But that's what I'm saying. So presumably she's old and been around doing it.
Right.
You're new.
I'm new.
Who's better?
That's a good question.
How do you know who's better?
So there are some things that are called like the common factors in psychotherapy.
Okay.
That ultimately, when you look at every type of therapy, every style of therapy, every modality or philosophy in psychotherapy, it all becomes relatively meaningless. Because what you find is it's really just, is the therapist, do they come off as empathetic? Do they seem to like you, and do you like them enough to keep talking to them? Mm-hmm. I'm forgetting the rest of them now.
It sounds like if you vibe with the therapist and you keep talking, just the process of talking does some good.
It does a lot of good. There's also
most of the good.
It does a good chunk of it, but there's like I think it's called like the pink hat problem, where if you study 2 different types of therapy, one, it's actually the same, but one person wears a pink hat when they do the therapy.
Okay. Is this a real experiment?
Yeah. And then, so sometimes you'll see that the person with the pink hat, maybe they get better results or maybe they get worse results. But if they get better results, you go, well, the pink hat was pretty special. Yeah. Let's do something with it. So, it's really, I mean, we can just use it as a thought experiment, but when you think about people getting observed, they perform better generally.
Right.
That's just the Hawthorne effect, which don't want to get into this level of nerdiness, but that's where we're at, I guess. But
I'm interested.
So there are
every single time I've seen you out, and I always end up asking you about psychotherapy stuff or whatever the hell you're doing, and you always got some weird, cool, interesting thing to say.
Well, it's fun.
And then you're funny too, so it's not dry.
Well, thank you.
That guy,
He's
good.
I feel like that tone came off like I didn't appreciate it, but I do.
You don't handle compliments well, do you, Greg?
No, I don't, and that's
because of your mother?
that's something I need to work on in therapy.
Your mother?
It's
Did she not compliment you enough?
Maybe she complimented me too much. No, they were good. Let's not get into it. See, I'm already like, right? I'm like, oh.
You're kind of willing to go there. You're like,
but should I?
I don't need to. That's
It's just so easy to just like slip into that where I'm like, no, I'm not. This isn't the time for me to share this information. Like I already said more than anyone needed to know about my mother on this podcast.
Please,
she's a great woman. I love her.
I'm sure she's great.
But
Greg's mom.
Hey,
give it up for Greg's mom.
Thanks, Mom. Shout out to Bernadette.
My dad's name's Bernard.
Really? I thought you say his name is Bernadette.
No, his name's Bernard.
Wow.
Bernard and Bernadette.
Wow.
That's
got to be something.
There's got to be something. You tell me.
I don't know. I mean, we look at the constellations and we make connections. We see slightly different names and we're like, maybe there's something there too.
Yeah. I've noticed with therapy stuff, people who are in therapy, who are like, oh, you got to go to therapy, they're the ones who don't change. What's up with What's up with that? What's up? They're the ones who are consistently like, talk to my therapist about it.
Yeah.
And I'm staying the course.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it seems like it's troubling you.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to that to unpack there because it's there are those common factors I think have limits because they sometimes don't focus on skills, and certain times it's skills or other facets in someone's life that leads to their difficulty, whatever they've been struggling with, whatever makes you know that they probably should be in therapy. If that's the case, but their therapist just kind of lets them ramble and they like hanging out and talking, sometimes you don't get that far. But the patient going to therapy, they feel good doing it. So if they ask how's therapy going, they say it's great. But then you ask, well, how are your relationships with your boyfriend or your parents or whatever? And they're like, well, they're terrible. But so you don't work on those in therapy? No.
I complain about them.
So like when I see patients to manage just medications and not do therapy, I always end up doing some amount of therapy. I can't help it.
That's just what you like.
I just love doing it. And even if I could just get a little, like plant this seed that maybe there's more to their problems than medications, because because medications don't fix a lot of those things. Like the thing that your friends probably that is sort of bad about their behavior or perception, medications do not do anything about that. It might make them more capable to deal with the distress of solving the problem, but there's so much more to it. So when I see somebody who's got anxiety or depression, it's always more than just a medication to provide relief. There are certain indications for like the biological process, like in schizophrenia and in like mania, but those there's still a value in therapy for everybody. So with my medication patients, especially if I don't have much time with them, and I usually don't, unfortunately, that's just the nature of American healthcare, is they don't let us work the way that we could most effectively. It's more about efficiency and billing codes. But so I'll have patients who come in who have these big problems and they want me to solve them with medications, and they're going to see their therapist. And I had one specific person I saw who
name names
clearly
who was it?
Bernard Groce.
No, he would never go to.
No,
he would never go to therapy.
I feel like Bernard is not going to therapy.
Absolutely. Me and my brother have been like, hey, have you thought about maybe potentially going to? And he's like, why? He's like.
But yeah, so this person came in and they're asking me to kind of medicate everything, and it's very clear that medications aren't doing it because they're on enough as it is. Maybe they're asking for more, and it's like that's really not safe, and it's not going to get to these other problems. And I talked to their therapist, and I'm like, so yeah, what do you think is going on? And usually, like a good therapist will, even if it's even if they know they're not doing the things that patient needs, they can often acknowledge it. Like, yeah, this person does have these issues, and it would be great if they saw this kind of therapist to specifically kind of go after those problems, but they're not doing that. They're only going to me. And I'm wondering, like, why are you just seeing them because they'll show up and pay you to talk to them? But I didn't want to get into that with them because that's also maybe not true at all. And maybe they are doing more to it, but I'm just assuming, because from my perspective, there's a lot not happening. But so there are therapists who don't really do much, or they just don't address specific problems, but they do make people feel better by nature of their presence.
So I'm very interested in psychology and the idea of therapy. I've gone to a few therapists over the years, and it's never for long stretches. It was for like 2 or 3 months, or 6 months here. And like I did like 6 months in college, and that was just because I could. Sure. Like it was just I was just in there. I just talked about my day, and she was like, "Well, Tyler, it sounds like you're having a great time." And I was like, "Thanks." Excellent. And I would just run off, and I felt good. Yeah. I felt great. Nice. Dr. Nancy. I forget her last name, but Nancy. Nancy was dope. Nice. And then I've had like usually after breakups and stuff, which is why I'm
interesting. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So, well, there's plenty to consider.
Yeah. Usually after breakups, I look for something, or whenever I was in Amsterdam, and that was a really tough year. I went to find, and I never like it. I liked Nancy because there was no problem. So I was just like, hey, how you doing, Nance? How you doing? Listen to me. And then after that, it always just felt like this thing of like, no one wants to get in and help. You know what I mean? Like they just listen and they're like, okay, cool, interesting. Well, but no one's like, I don't know what I want. I want the fatal flaw in me that I can't see. I want to become aware of it so that I can tweak it and change it and do better. And I feel like a lot of therapists just don't want to. Yeah. What is that? Take responsibility for their job and like really potentially help or hurt somebody. Or is that that's also part of the profession too? So you tell me.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm a psychiatrist and not a psychologist. It's and also it's a thing that it's.
But you talk to people though, right? You don't just do medicine,
right? Okay. But we do both. We've been kind of in modern times been relegated to doing sometimes only medications and just targeting symptoms, which is tragic because we do all this training. I've spent countless hours, hundreds of hours doing psychotherapy and attending lectures on psychotherapy. We have a good relationship with some of the local psychologists and other types of therapists who help teach us some of these things. So it's a skill that I really like my training program because they focus on that part and they're like, we're losing this as a profession and we should get it back. But going back to your question, so there's a few pieces to that. One, sometimes people go into therapy feeling like they have to bring everything and they get anxiety about when they run out of stuff to talk about. Like I've heard friends tell me this. I've felt this too in my own therapy. Like I show up and I'm like, I don't know how to make this an hour. And to that I say first, like
it's hard to fill an hour.
Yeah. I've done 20 minutes tops. No, but an astute therapist can extract all the information they need from you so that you don't really need to bring all that much. The main thing that helps guide therapy is something like that question. Like, I feel like there's something getting in my way and I want to work on that, but I can't wrap my mind around it. And I think an impartial third party would be able to. Yeah. So sometimes taking a psychodynamic approach, which is a philosophy that was kind of born out of what Freud did, but they kind of took out a lot of the nonsense of it, that people were like, he was just getting psychotic on the amount of cocaine he was doing. but some of these things are interesting, and they've validated studies that show that psychodynamic psychotherapy, full title, is effective in treating a lot of different things. So what a psychodynamic psychotherapist will do that's not unique entirely, but this is one type of therapy that would do this, is they will try to understand first. Well, you can talk about what's going on, of course, like if there's something on your mind now, but they want to understand the nature of your relationships from early on, where you kind of learned how people get along, like what romantic and familial love look like, how you form bonds with people. There are patterns, and then you learn about that, and then you learn about relationships, romantic and otherwise, over the span of your lifetime, and how those have played out, and see, are there patterns there or not? And often we see these patterns start early, and then I always check, though. I'll think, man, I've got a really good idea of what's happening here. Let me tell you what I've come up with about what I'm seeing here. And I'll say something, my thought of that's summarizing what's going on that may be helpful to elucidate what's really going on. And then they'll say, yeah, or I encourage them to like, please call me out if I'm full of shit here, because if I say the wrong thing, you might just go on Twitter and be like, my idiot therapist just told me that he thinks this about my problems. And you see that and online. And so I'm like,
then in person, they're like, interesting. Maybe I'll think about that.
Yeah, like I can't go away
so
to
many
roast
Twitter likes, so many followers.
Yeah. So that's a helpful therapeutic approach to try to.
That's what I need.
So establishing an understanding of those kind of patterns in relationships, patterns in your behavior, how you respond to different situations, often kind of come out of that too. So like important lessons in life can be kind of figured out. But the problem with a lot of psychodynamic work is sometimes finding out why is great. It's kind of liberating when you finally figure something out. Like my therapist helped me better understand some of why I started doing stand-up, and like it's Bernadette's fault.
Bernadette?
No, it's James' fault.
James.
That's my dad's name.
He made you do comedy?
Yeah.
What did he do?
No, he didn't. Both my parents are very funny. It was other stuff. I don't blame my parents for the comedy thing, except for them showing me comedy as a kid. But I just had to explain that for some reason. Like, just in case my parents check this out, like I want to make sure they get the respect they deserve. They get
the credit. They don't have to take the responsibility.
Yeah, my siblings can go fuck themselves, but no, they're great too. But anyways, I feel like one of them may one day watch this. But so you figure out the why. Yeah. Why am I like this? But then what do you do with that information once you get it? Like when people talk about something bad happened to me. Why did that happen? Something bad happens, and like something bad political, some like big things happen, and where you try to figure out why they happened, but then you have to figure out, well, what the hell do I do with this? How do I fix this problem? If I see it as a problem, sometimes it's just I wanted to understand that. So a lot of people who spend years in psychodynamic psychotherapy, they had problems, but they're in a group that people describe as the worried well, and they often are wealthy enough to afford a therapist for years.
To just keep digging.
They just keep digging and understanding, and that doesn't
do anything.
Right.
It's not going to help.
It doesn't fix your problem.
Because part of psychology and understanding yourself and navel gazing is kind of like there's like an infinite number of stories and thoughts and theories and ideas that might be applicable. Yeah. But like to what end?
Yeah. But with that clarity, you can.
Then that's the thing. Make a choice.
Now you can recognize. Oh, I'm doing this again. Let me stop. So it can be. So it's not like it has no value in problem solving.
I'm terrified of. That's what I'm terrified of, because this whole psychodynamic thing makes sense. Because I've dated people And there's definitely a pattern there. And I haven't dated a lot of people, like intensely serious relationships. So it's like I don't have a lot of data points. But there is something where it's like they're usually nice. 'Cause I like nice people.
Sure.
They're usually really people pleasy on the outside, and just like, hey, you're great, what do you got to say? And I'm like, well, I got some things to say. And then they like to listen to me. And then underneath that there's often there's like some sort of insecurity or emotional like immaturity or something like that.
So they're like as long as you keep talking and get the attention, they never have to bring up that stuff until
you tell me what you already know.
You give them the space. You open the door at some point in time, and then it happens. But I imagine that this is a major oversimplification.
Yeah.
But that eventually you make them feel safe enough that and this is like a sense of safety on like a psychological level, not like physical safety, but that's always kind of part of usually. But something kind of allows them to feel comfortable to sort of release the rest that they may have been hiding, but it's not necessarily intentional. It's sort of they keep their guard up also to protect themselves, because maybe they genuinely like you and they don't want to scare you away.
Right.
So they make sure that they understand you to feel safe around. Again, this is not always done intentionally. Right. This can be just the way that they operate.
Yeah, this is not what happens.
Okay.
This is not what happens. What happens is I'm talking, having fun there. I'm being an entertainer.
Yeah.
See, because I'm hard. This is how I've thought about it. I'm hard on the outside because I'm trying to be like fun, confident, interesting. Like a person that people are like, hey, that guy's he's got something going on. But then underneath, I'm soft on the inside. There's a sensitivity. There's, of course, you got your insecurities. You got your stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then there's been people who are like, I mean, the personalities vary, but it's like they seem like soft and fun and open and sweet on the outside, and then on the inside, there's a toughness there that I don't respond to. So what happens is I'm talking, I'm having fun, I'm being my confident self. Eventually, life happens, something happens, I have a bad mood, I'm in a bad day, and then that soft side comes out, or I'm like, hey, you're with somebody long enough, you're like, oh, hey, you hurt me. I just want to tell you that, like, you hurt me by doing that. And they're not able to, they're like, I like the confident guy. Oh, this guy. And it's of course they're not mean about it, but it is sort of like, I don't have the inner self-esteem, security.
They can't keep up with you
to deal with your shit, because that's just reminding me of my shit.
So you're driving them away here.
That's what it feels like.
Okay. So all that I was talking about was not right at all.
No, it wasn't, but it was a fun tangent.
And I'm glad that I did it so people can see how wrong I'm comfortable being.
Yeah. I am so great at being wrong. It rolls right off my back.
See how good I am when I'm right, though.
And this is the pattern that I've come into. This is what's happened in various ways. I'm coming out of relationships, so it's definitely that's most fresh. But I've definitely seen that happen multiple times.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm worried about is that if I understand why and I get there, I'm still attracted. I still want. I still desire these people who I get in this pattern with, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Am I doomed to be alone, Greg?
Yeah, but there's other. Like you might. Thinking about it, it's kind of loaded, right? Because there's so much there that you're also assuming about this pattern here, because there's all these other steps that are sort of conscious and maybe not fully, like some subconscious steps that you're taking when you're making connections with people, and when you're making connections with somebody you're especially romantically or even just sexually attracted to, there's so much there already that we would need to kind of unpack and dissect a little bit more and look at and think more about, because it's going to take some more reflection to also wonder, like, who are people you seek out generally, because there's a lot of different types of people that can be giving you the attention to make you feel good, and they like you because you get attention, but there's so much more to those kinds of things. And also this is being paired with like these romantic relationships, but doesn't seem to be happening to you in your other friendships.
I got great friends.
So what's happening there is another question you can ask yourself and think more about, that I would be a whole lot easier to do if like I didn't already know you.
Right.
So finding a therapist who can work with you on this will be great. But these are the kinds of things that you would want to work out, is like trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I really
break up? Because I have my little narrative that I've developed.
Yeah.
And you're saying that you're like, yeah, that's a nice little narrative, but there's also other stuff that you're not really considering that might be just as impactful as the narrative that you've talked about. So we're friends, and we're not going to go there
because you showed me that you showed me the Google map, but if there's the satellite map with all the details that's missing there. So I see where you go from A to B, but there's all this stuff I don't even have a topographical map to. This analogy is getting too shaky, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there's so much more detail there that could be fleshed out that might be much more valuable. That'll also not just give you some clarity, but also make you think next time you make a connection with somebody and wonder, where you don't have to go, hey, I just want you to know that, like, I'm glad that you're attracted to me, and I'm attracted to people who are attracted to me, but I want you to also know that I'm going to get a little soft on you, and you gotta love that. You gotta love that too. Just twisting their arm. Like, if you don't love it, there's no way.
I think that's probably what I think. That sounds accurate.
But you would never want to be that transparent, also, because you just scare people away. Probably they're like,
no one.
They're like, Tyler, I just met you.
No one seems to like it, and I'm never that
sure.
transparent, because I'm not. Unless it comes up in conversation, we're talking about it. I'm not like.
They're like, okay, so what happened with that last partner and that other person? Okay, and then why'd that person break up with you? Just going down first conversation.
Just to let you know where I'm at. All right. Exactly. And then you do all that. Mm-hmm. No, that's interesting stuff. So what is do you have anything like that? Do you have anything that about yourself that you were like, oh, I don't understand this thing, and then through your life or psychotherapy or whatever, you're like, oh, I got really good insight on it and it changed everything?
Oh yeah, I think something recently is I have a lot of like in psychodynamic, what they call obsessional personality traits. Like, I ruminate. I spend a lot of time like thinking about things that are not always consequential at all. But I also kind of think through things rigidly in a way. Like, for example, if this weekend my wife and I were talking about going to get wings at a place. I'm just trying to avoid saying Buffalo Wild Wings for some reason. I don't know. I'll go to Buffalo Wild Wings right now.
I prefer Hooters.
If you didn't have a show.
Hooters recently?
Not recently.
It's really good.
Is it still?
It's really good. I went there as a joke, and I was like, holy shit!
But you went by yourself, and
I went with my ex.
Oh
yeah.
Well, you were still together, or you went together as a joke?
We went together when
after
we were
together.
Broke up.
Okay. Let's see. Who can ruin this?
We broke up. It's like, well, thanks for spending this part of your life with me. It's like, it'd be hilarious,
right?
If right now we went to fucking Hooters.
This will really put a bow on that relationship.
No, while we were still together.
But so we make a simple plan for Saturday, right?
Yeah.
It's Friday today, so Saturday rolls around, and our beautiful little baby she's teething and constipated, so she's in a lot of pain and she's requiring more love and affection, which we are ready and willing to give her,
and legally required.
And then but then my wife goes, hey, let's cancel our plans to go get wings today. I get really pissed off about it. Like, I don't yet, like, I'm not yet, I'm just like internally, like, I'm like washing dishes. Like, I can't believe we just changed our plans like that. Like, we could take the baby with us and take care of her and still eat wings. It's gonna be, and I'm just freaking out. And I know that she proposed like a pretty reasonable plan, and I'm just trying to shoehorn in what I had kind of set my heart out for that day. Yeah. And so then I'm just kind of anxious and a little more irritable the rest of the day, maybe even the whole weekend, because I lost the little plan to get wings.
Yeah.
But it also works at like my job. Like, if I have a schedule in the afternoon and somebody runs long and then I'm late to the rest of my appointments, and then I come home late.
Every meeting is
after,
like, fucking, you fucker.
Right, yeah. Well, I put on a good face, and then if I have to talk to my supervisor about something that's going on, because periodically you do that in a training program, I'm going to be like talking fast, and I'm going to be kind of irritable. I'll go back, see my patient, try to put on a nice calm demeanor, but internally I'm like really upset because I'm off. And suddenly I'm worrying about, well, if I'm 10 minutes behind, by my last patient, I'll be 15, 20 minutes behind. And what if one of them leaves because they can't wait because they're rude, or they can't wait because they actually have other things to do that they couldn't wait for me for? So I just start freaking out. And so that happens in all facets of my life.
Right.
And it's a lot of useless energy to be spending, feeling stressed, and just putting all this pressure on myself. And because I'm usually not mad at anybody in particular.
Yeah, I was going to ask, whenever you're washing the dishes, not eating Buffalo Wild Wings, is the
I'm
anger aimed at your wife, or is
it's
the universe?
Yeah,
you're just thinking like, it could have happened though.
Yeah.
Like, we could have did it.
Yeah. Like, I'd be eating wings right now, and I'm up to my elbows in formula, stuff like that. So yeah, I learned a long time ago, like, not direct it at anybody, because that's definitely counterproductive, because they don't mean anything by it. So I thought, well, I'll get ahead of it by, if somebody says something, like if I make plans with somebody and then they cancel them, and I was actually excited about it, I would just tell them, like, it's just really frustrating when I was excited to do this thing. So I just expressed my thought.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to bring me much relief. And it was more just,
and it probably made them be like, oh.
Yeah, they were just kind of like, oh, Jesus. It's like,
oh, okay. And then it's like, oh,
it doesn't really.
That didn't help. Now you're sad and I'm mad. Well,
this sucks. Yeah. So now I just, I think about my thoughts that during that time. I also remind myself of also like the absurdity about getting upset, and that there's really, getting upset about it doesn't fix what's changed.
Uber Eats.
What
does.
I can.
Did anyone consider just?
You could just, I mean, that could
Uber Eatsing the Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, but then you get $30 of wings for about $150, something like that.
Listen, I mean, I'm just trying to keep you happy, buddy. I'm just trying to get you your wings.
If I could drop $150 on wings.
Yeah, but you're up to your elbows in formula.
I'm like, stop. Yeah, it's up to my waist now, but I'm just bathing
in it. Isn't that lower?
Yeah. Well, no, see, you get out of the sink, and then it's filling up the kitchen. In my mind, the sink is overflown. So now I'm in a little.
You were in the sink, and then now you're in the.
I was leaning over into the sink, spilling over. For some reason, it's still formula, not water. I'm just spilling it in to keep it, but so I tried to also, like, I try to look at the thought of, like, about what I'm getting upset about. Like, the plans were changed, and now you're not gonna go get your wings. And you can then kind of think about, well, like, how much do you really need wings? Like, do you want to, like, you lost like 5-10 pounds training for a half marathon. Isn't it kind of nice that you felt like healthier, that like maybe you'll be there longer for your baby and for your wife and your whole family? It'd be nice.
And then the devil's like, fuck that baby, get the wings. Get those get the fucking honey barbecue sauce, man.
So you can, and these are all
Parmesan, Greg.
No, I would never
throw that baby in the trash. Save money on formula.
I'll buy less formula, but still buying it.
You still have some.
Still, I'd love to have it.
I've made a habit.
Yeah,
I can't start my day with a little formula.
Mixing it into my coffee. So now I do that, and it's a little bit of using what's called acceptance and commitment therapy, which has been a therapy modality like psychodynamic psychotherapy that I've recently fallen in love with, because it kind of helped me relieve some of the tension and stress that I go through unnecessarily in these situations.
Accepting whatever happened, whatever change.
Accepting,
committing,
and taking committed actions to, I don't know, calm down, work on whatever is actually important. Focus my energy. Like, oh yeah, well now I can be more helpful to take care of our baby because she's fussy and. I think
something
like that.
This is the truth of like actual therapy, is like it's pretty like, it's not. I was like, what's a big breakthrough that you had?
Yeah, it wasn't. It's taken a while.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. It wasn't like I realized that when I was 7, a chicken wing molested me, and that's why. Like it's not like some big thing. It's just like, no, I have this thing where I get mad at stuff, and there are things that I can think and say and do and ways to reframe things that will make me not respond that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not as magical as sometimes we like to think it is. And
it's like committing to doing it over and over again, even though you don't like it.
You want to, yeah.
You don't. You don't
always.
You just want to be angry.
And if that's what you want, then why aren't we talking about what made you so mad?
Yeah.
The other like big thing, a friend of mine told me when I was starting out doing therapy and feeling like I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was getting super anxious. I had these 2 patients. They're both in their 20s, and they were telling me about like what's going on, and they both also had therapists in the past. So I'm like, okay, so they're gonna maybe compare me to their past therapists. I've got like shoes to fill here. I have no idea what I'm doing or what's going on right now. And then my friend was like, you just need to be curious about what they tell you, like what people say. So when you say something interesting, you can kind of chew on that and dissect something out of it, and then maybe you find something therapeutic to discuss about it. Like I have plenty of patients who talk about how they're like, yeah, my apartment is really, really messy. But like if I have people over, I'll know where they're going and I'll clean it up, but I can't clean up for myself. Or I'll ask like, okay, so you clean up for other people, but when it's just for you, why don't you take care of the room for yourself? You would kind of explore that, to be curious about these things.
Right.
And in one situation where I was doing specifically something about like cleanliness, we figured out like, they have like devalued themselves a lot, and but they spend a lot of time making everybody else happy. So they stop, once they kind of tell themselves like, I do have value, and I can prove that by cleaning up my space for myself and for no one else. So clean up places that no one else can see, and do it with the intention that this is just for you. So that you could call that like a committed action to clean for you. And then sometimes people come in after something like that, and they'll say, yeah, I cleaned up half the place. It felt really good. Or maybe it didn't, but sometimes you'll see people who they start to stick to that, and then they let it roll, or with some encouragement, they start doing more and more things with that same mind frame, thinking about, well, what else do I not do because of this other problem. And it all came from being curious, like, well, like why don't you clean your bedroom if no one's going in there?
Yeah.
So you start there. So being curious was such a good place to start. And now that I've been 3 years later, I'm like feeling
so fucking curious,
really comfortable.
Yeah.
Especially like when I get something wrong, like I did earlier, like I at first I was like, why did he let me keep going? But second, I was like, no, this is actually a really good example. I'm like really glad he let me do that, like internally.
Mm-hmm.
And then
you're already trying to reframe it. You're like, no, stupid critical part of your brain.
No, Tyler's a good host. He's doing a great job.
I'm doing what I can.
Yeah, I'm not disappointed. I'm not mad.
That's also going through my, like you're thinking about that. I'm going through my head like, well, Tyler, you gotta I'm simultaneously like, focus.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening, be present, but also like kind of have something going in the back of your head in case we need to shift gears or move left or right. But then even that thing, even though it's a protective instinct, is not. I don't want that instinct. So it's like it's a weird balancing between all these different.
That's like being in the moment is really hard.
Yeah.
Even for people who are really good at it, it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
That's why I try to jot things down quickly. Like if we were doing a therapy session, if they say something interesting but they didn't pause, I'll jot the thought down as fast as I can, because I've found that if I try to take too elaborate of a note, I'll just get lost in my own thought, and then I lost seconds, minutes of time that they were telling me something that could have been really important, and then that's just gone forever, and that might come up again in that session, again in the future. And then I have to either admit that I wasn't paying attention or do something. And usually like enough content gets shared that it's like, I don't know if I remember that. Can you remind me? That's like nice protective, without necessarily lying to somebody. Not lying.
Here's what I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So you studied a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about like Jungian
stuff?
Psychology? Because my ex was really into it, and we'd talk about it, and she'd give me books and I'd learn about it. And like, ooh, this is interesting stuff. And it was like I could go so far with it, and then it started getting, I'm like, y'all, we're really stretching here for what is, because Jungian stuff has a lot to do with dreams, has a lot to do with like the collective unconscious, like your mind comes pre-structured to be a human, which makes sense. But then it also comes like we have these grand narratives in our brain that is the unconscious that we're living as a species. That is made manifest, and it's all interesting. I'm not even anti these things, but as far as its usefulness in therapy, and your dreams are speaking to you in the language of the unconscious to pull you towards your destiny, it gets very Tolkien very quickly.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, listen, I can get on board with a lot of this. But there has to be a line where it's like we are getting into some dogma.
Yeah. Well,
you're probably more well read on that. So
I'm actually not at all. You probably have more knowledge, but I think maybe we can talk through it and better understand it. So, these big theories that people have, you always want to question them and think, are they predictive of anything? Because every scientific theory that's worth its salt, it has predictive value. That is an important component to anything. So like theory of evolution, you can predict that things can happen in such a way because it follows the tenets of evolutionary theory. Physics, we can drop a ball and calculate how fast, etc. Because we make predictions. So I'm sorry. Let me check one thing on my phone, because I think it might be the show later texting me. Oh, okay.
I make sure that they.
Yeah, it's only 4, but.
Okay, I'm just paranoid, and they'll text me before the show, so I'm just like, let me just answer if they do text me.
Gotcha.
But that was not them, so I'm just gonna put on Do Not Disturb and keep it moving. See? Okay. What were you saying?
So predictive value in a scientific theory is really valuable. there are some things in that you even just said right there that could be another, like an interpretation of understanding why things happen. So like I was having a conversation with my friend about this, like embryology, like the growth and development from cells to a full organism like a human. It works almost like, when I learned it felt like I was learning about a Rube Goldberg machine. Like something happens and then these things are lined up in these ways that suddenly you don't just get a bunch of identical cells, you get a bunch of cells that have they all have the same DNA in them, but all the cells are different inside your body that are expressing that DNA, and there are all these factors that go behind it, and that also leads to like the structure of our brain. And you can see, if you they have these things called brain banks. They don't do them that often anymore, but they're literally brains of people who donated their brains for scientific research, and they just sit in these big rooms in these tubs to preserve them, and then people can
like a lot, like how many to a tub?
One per tub. You get one per tub.
I'm like, is it respectful where it's like this is John Smith's, or is it like, get one out of the brain bucket, let's go grab one?
Yeah, like we're using barrels now.
Squeeze it. If it's a little hard, that's what we're looking. Just get any of them. Yeah. It tastes better when you pick your own.
Yeah, those are in brine, by the way. So you can, if you take a bunch of them, there is a lot that's common there. I mean, surgeons rely on this heavily. They rely on being able to like open up the body or open up the skull and have these landmarks that represent these specific things. And for how complex everything is, we get it right pretty well for the skills and tools that we have and the knowledge we have so far, because there's so much that we don't know about the brain. So taking all of that we do know about how we go from a sperm and an egg to this fully functional person with all of these thoughts, and then all of these sort of these thought patterns that we can see people have, and then just the structures of our brains, and think you could interpret that sort of statement about the superstructure of the brain as kind of like a way to describe that. Yeah. Like you could see a mound of dirt and call it a mound of dirt, but you could see a mound of dirt and say that looks like a little pyramid if you just brush it on the side, or that's a pitcher's mound and I'm going to go play on, so you can, there's a lot of different ways to call it, and it's kind of all of those things.
Right.
But if you call it a pitcher's mound, someone's gonna have to step on that and throw a baseball
to make sure that it's a
to also, if you're calling it that, you're also predicting that it's going to be used as that that sort of like predictive value. So this is my theory, or my hypothesis is that's not a mound of dirt with no purpose. It's a mound. So this is getting too far, but what I'm saying is, I think
what you're saying,
there's a way to it's a way to explain the phenomenon of our existence and how odd and confusing it can be at times.
Yeah, it's very confusing. You're saying that this theory of, and it's not about the brain, it's about the mind. That's right. That's what's different about it. It's about this thing that we all have that is sort of studyable, right? Sort of. Mm-hmm. And that's what's interesting about it. And that's what's interesting about Jungian psychology in general, is like, I think him in his biography or something, I read like, it was bad. So I read like 20 pages of it. But he did talk about how like part of his psychology is like, we want to come up with these methods to understand each other and understand the mind and understand the way we behave. But at the end of the day, no two people have had the same experiences, lived in the same time, had the same blah, blah, blah. So there is some level of psychology that is one-to-one. So there is some personal individualness that you can't grasp from study or reading a book or like learning about all of these ways the brain works, or these psycho problems, mental health issues or whatever. So you have to get to know the person, and like every therapeutic relationship becomes like an adventure into the unknown to discover the actual unique natures and problems with this person. And I don't get that as much from normal therapy. It's it's pretty metal.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
yeah.
every relationship is an adventure. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. But I mean, I could argue that psychodynamic therapy does kind of the same thing, but with different words. But no, I think
he speaks more grand about it, which is appealing.
For sure. And there are Jungian analysts who are out there now. Like I sometimes I listen to their podcast. They're so dry I can't keep up with them.
They really suck, and they're speaking their own language, and it's so inaccessible.
And they talk in a like a lower tone and more like and monotone. Then they're like really
literally
slow.
Just the tone of their voice.
They're like, this is. And when they have an upper inflection, I feel like it's an NPR style voice, and maybe it's just the people in this podcast. and like because NPR copying NPR is like so common in like non-comedy podcasts. It's irritating. But anyways, main point. So Jungian theory.
Act 2, Jungian theory.
Yeah, you gotta have like a little music.
He's on NPR,
musical interlude.
Who's that? Ira Glass. He's on NPR, right?
Yeah, he was a big NPR.
I was doing Ira Glass.
Yeah, This American Life, I think, is his show.
I think so, yeah.
I don't know.
It's good.
Is it? People love it.
It's good. It's been around forever.
Yeah, they call it a podcast. I think it's a radio show.
Who knows? There's no difference anymore.
There really isn't. Because you have people play music on podcasts now.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I actually did one, so I'm not hating on them. I like them. They're actually
like we're talking, and it's like, all right, let's take a break with this podcast with a little bit of Elton John, Tiny Dancer.
Well, like my friends did this podcast. I'm just gonna plug them. It's called Sad Punks. Sad Punks. They would have musicians and other people. They've had comedians on before to curate a playlist. And then you would say your piece at the beginning of the episode, and then the two hosts, Tim and Raquel, they would kind of talk about each song and talk about each artist between songs. And so it's actually kind of cool because I would learn about music that I would never have listened to on my own, and get some more perspective on it to help me appreciate it more. Because there are bands that like they sound fine, but if I know nothing about them, I may have no reason to feel more compelled to listen further. So yeah, that does happen. There is radio style shows, but that's almost more like college radio, I guess. At least that's what it feels like in my head.
Wait, so what about this Jungian podcast that you did?
So
besides their shitty voices?
That, well, and then like I rarely ever hear them really say anything that I don't know. I guess they're not surprising me very much by the things that they're saying. But I feel like I get lost so fast that I don't get into the meat of the stuff that's uniquely Jungian. So I'm just hearing like explanations.
I think what it is. I think it's a cult. I think is what it is. Whenever you get deeply into it, I think it's a cult, because a lot of Jungian stuff, they use mythical ideas to explain the mind. Okay, and I'm not even hating on that idea, because I mean, like, that's what religion is. That's what, that's what myth is. It is this thing that humans do to explain the things we can't explain, whether it's nature or the idea, the spirit that we feel and the connectedness with God, or even just ourselves. Yeah. And so that's what it is. So but it becomes a religion. It becomes like we have the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We have take a piece of my body and drink my blood. And if you don't,
in the same tone,
if you've never heard that before, you're like, this sounds fucking crazy. Yeah, but instead, it's like these scientists, and they have mustaches, and
they all have cigars,
and, ascots, and then they're like, the inner mother. My inner mother came to me in a dream and interacted with the jokester, trying to integrate my shadow into my conscious self, similar to how Artemis killed Ezekiel and Greek mythology. Like they make all of these connections to real life, like Roman myths, and like, oh, it's because the connectedness between your heart and your mind goes through your dick. And so just like with these gods, and it's like, it makes coherent sense, but it's like, guys, this is a lot.
This is a long way to go.
This. And so I was like, what's your point?
And is this therapeutic?
What's your point? Is this therapeutic? It feels like we're just speaking very interestingly about that. That's the thing that annoys me. It's like if it was just, if we're talking about myths and stuff, great. Yeah. But if we're talking like this is a science that is going to help people,
right, this is supposed to be therapy.
I understand that. I think
it's therapeutic.
Like, the idea is like you project your personal story onto a grander narrative to find meaning. And that's cool.
Sure.
So people do with the Bible. So people do with the Jewish Bible, but the Muslim Bible. All the Bibles.
The two books that people really like.
All the Bibles. Jewish Bible, Muslim Bible, Bible.
Buddhist Bible, mate.
Buddha Bible.
Buddha Bible.
But yeah, it's just it's weird. I thought you might know more about that.
Yeah, we'll have to meet up again and talk about it after I read some about it. But I think this goes back to part of the problem with some types of therapy when you're uncovering the understanding of maybe the why or the what. Like, what is the problem? Usually you want to find out, why do I have this problem? And then it's like, well, what do I do with this understanding now? And so sometimes, like, I know that I've heard people, I actually had a supervisor who you kind of like, you meet with. Did you watch The Therapist or The Patient? I think it was the name of that show on Hulu with Steve Carell. And the patient kidnaps Steve Carell.
No.
There's a lot of scenes.
I watched a lot of other recent therapy TV shows, but really? I did not watch that.
It came out last year, but there are all these cut scenes of him meeting with David Alan Grier, who was like his supervisor, who he goes to talk to get some advice on taking care of patients. And this is a common thing, especially when you're in training, to gain some perspective on what's going on, and if you maybe give you some ideas of other ways to ask about a problem and things like that. So my therapy supervisor, I meet with him weekly, and I'll talk about things that have come up. Sometimes I'll kind of have a script of the dialogue I had with my patient and then read them off certain points and be like, could I have said something else there? Or could I have asked something? Or what do you think they said with that statement or something like that? So you have these people in training. But I had a supervisor once who told me, I'm really interested in learning about like the shadow self, that like is kind of Jungian concept.
Yeah.
And like shadow work is how he described it. And then he was like, yeah, let's talk about it next week. And then like the day before we met, he sent me an email. He's like, hey, I was talking to my friend who's like a Jungian analyst, and she said not to do anything, like not to talk about it because it's too complicated. So I was like, I was going to like finally learn like something more like potentially useful in like the Jungian philosophy. And then some Jungian person intercepted it, so I'm not.
I was like, he's dumb. You don't want to.
He's a dumb idiot.
You don't want to go.
He's half Polish. So that's enough.
That
would be weird if that person knew that side about me.
Like, he's half Polish. That's a
shadow.
Yeah.
That is it has something to do with Sisyphus, I think. But
no, that stuff. You can watch like some basic like YouTube stuff and get like the basis of that shit down. But it's just they go so deep into it. Like this, you know what the shadow is now? Did you ever look into it, or did you just let that go?
I just kind of let it go. Like I like if you started talking about it, it might like click for me. But I'm like, I feel like I can't even begin to try to describe it.
Yeah, from my understanding of it, it's an interesting idea because it feels true just if you hear it. So it's like you have your whole self as a thing, and you have your conscious and you have your unconscious side.
Yeah.
And your shadows and your unconscious. And your shadow is the parts of you that your ego does not want to accept. Your shadow, or it's simply the parts of you that you just don't, you're unaware of. Maybe you're you're always really shitty in traffic. You're road rage because you don't want to acknowledge that. I don't know something. I'm not good at this, but it's like it's something. It could be good things. It could be bad things. It could be like, oh, I didn't know I was actually very ambitious. Or it's like, oh, I didn't know I was actually a fucking asshole or something like that. So there's this shadow side.
Yeah.
And the idea with Jung is you don't know that that's there because it's inherently outside of your conscious mind. And the thing is, to reach wholeness is to integrate those shadow parts of you into your being. So I guess I can think like the best example I can give in my own life is like whenever me and my ex, we were together, I moved to New York, and then it was like, I was in a new city. I was just left all this good comedy stuff behind, left my girl behind. Yeah. And so I was in a very insecure place. Yeah. And I was like and that's the other thing about it. It's like you project your shadow out so that it's not you. Yeah. So it's like I was projecting a lot onto her of like, oh, like I'm stressed and this isn't working out between us. But what we really was I was it was that because we ended up breaking up. But then we got there. Yeah. But a lot of it was like, oh, I feel like we're not connecting, or I feel like something's wrong, when really there was something in me, which was I was in a new place, and I sort of resented being in. Because it's like starting over. I felt like I was 23 again. I had all the same feelings that you had when you were leaving college.
Like, how do I make new friends?
I was like, I already did this. I don't want to fucking do this again. And then I was like, I felt weird and disconnected from the world around me. So I'm like, oh, are we okay? Because I feel like we're not connecting. But really, there was this shadow side of me. I was like, no, you need to realize that you're very even though you made this move and this is a good move for you, you're resentful of the way it's making you feel. You're insecure being in this city and being away from your support system, and like instead of acknowledging those things, I just projected them out from my shadow. And the right thing to do is to take those projections back, integrate them into your consciousness so that you can be a full person. Yeah. So you'd go, why am I feeling this way? Well, I feel resentful because I don't have I like my support network because they're strong. They're people I know, they're people I'm comfortable with, and they're not here, and I don't have that anymore. And that's how I establish feeling comfortable and supported. And then X, Y, and Z. And then I look at my girl and I'm like, why don't I feel comfortable and supported right now? And she's like, I don't know.
And then suddenly that's the soft side of you just came out, and she's not ready to handle it because you were crushing it. You won FPIA. You got there. And
I did it. This is a real behind the scenes of a therapist. I fucking crushed that diagnosis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She cried all afternoon, asked 2 good questions. I got you. I had a patient once. I asked him a question. They're rambling, and we're just getting to know each other. And I was like, do you find that you ramble a lot, almost like to avoid something more important to talk about? I had a sense that maybe that was happening. Yeah. And that could be. No, because there's no context that's going on here. Because I also ramble too much, so I could just be talking about myself here. But so I was talking to somebody, and they were rambling, and I just said, do you find that you talk too much to avoid something or to avoid talking about something? And immediately Nick took off his glasses and started crying. And that was not at all my intention. I didn't think I was going to be right. I thought I was just kind of testing the waters. Like, this is what this is what we do. Prepare for me to be wrong, and then got his ass real good.
Does it feel like that? No. When that happens, does it feel like
only when I feel like I did something good? Like when I've had times where I feel like we really not just uncovered a problem but solved it, or at least really started working on solving some problems. And often it's like these kinds of things are really subtle where I won't really even be aware of something. And so sometimes I'll look back before I see a patient again and think, I just wanted to point out, I noticed that something that you told me at the beginning or 6 months ago, all this month has not been happening. Have you noticed that you just stopped doing that? And that's a thing that's been bothering you? It's not even at the front of your mind anymore. We're talking about other stuff. Did you pick up on that?
Yeah.
And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But usually when they do, it's a nice moment. And typically they're the ones really doing the work. I'm just making good observations if I'm on top of things. They're doing the heavy lifting. And so usually they'll talk about how much they got better. And if it's somebody I can joke with, I'll be like, well, I did some of that, right? I helped, right? I was,
yeah.
but it is really rewarding when you do get like somebody to realize something big or make a big change. Yeah. Really, making the big change. So like realizing that you have a pattern in your relationships. I like if you didn't see that before and we helped uncover that. Yeah. I wouldn't feel very good because we just established the problem there. Mm-hmm. We haven't really, like, I'm not going to feel bad after doing therapy. I rarely feel bad after therapy. And usually it's if I've just had a lot of people dumping trauma on me. And then I'm just like, wow, that was brutal. It was a rough amount of content for several hours in a row. But that typically doesn't happen in like everybody. That's the nice thing. Like when things are going bad for with a patient, it's like, well, their time's going to run out and then someone else is going to walk in and that person's not going to have the same issues, hopefully. Yeah. Though like there were like patterns in like, this kind of maybe speaks to a collective unconscious thing. You could see some patterns in the way that like some people were destabilizing around the same time with similar problems. A lot of it was obvious, like isolation during the pandemic, people becoming depressed and even maxing out medications isn't doing anything for them because they're still not getting out and connecting anymore. Yeah. So there's things like that that can be nice, but usually there's enough variety in the day that you don't feel like emotionally drained at the end of it. But when you see progress in somebody, it's really nice. And especially when it's been like a hard road and like in like a patient, like I was talking about before, like where I'm like, I have no idea what to do or how to even help this person. If somehow someday later still working with them and they get better in some way, I'll feel good. Yeah. But sometimes it takes a while to figure it out. Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah. I get envious whenever I hear people who help people for real. And I'm like, it's not my path. Helping people, it's just not what God put me on the earth to do.
Right. So you're
he really wanted me to help myself this go round. Mm-hmm. God was like, you go do you. You go be a selfish piece of shit.
Yeah. That's time. Enough.
That's enough.
You can put a little bit of joy in somebody's life.
I do feel good about that. When I really think about it, where it's like, because people don't laugh.
I don't always laugh.
People don't. No, I mean, not when I'm on stage, they're laughing. Okay? When I'm on stage, they're laughing.
Going.
But in their everyday lives, a lot of people don't laugh. Yeah. And they can come to a comedy show, and I can maybe make a joke that makes them laugh.
Yeah, that's nice. Some people just have that like blank face, like that's their best laugh.
I hate it when crowds like they try to like. They respond to the logic of what I'm saying instead of just like having fun. Right. So some premise might be like, I don't know. You might be like, man, I got a baby. I hate that baby. And they're like, well, sometimes you do hate a baby. And it's like, will you just.
Like, but. Do you sometimes also?
Well, sometimes raising kids are hard.
Raising kid, that's tough.
I like how empathy. What's funny about being a comedian is empathy is like the core of making connections with people, and it's the perfect way to ruin any joke. Oh yeah. I mean, you can kill any joke by just being like, "Man, I hate my baby," and it's like, it's really hard to raise kids. Right. And I'm sure there's challenging points, but I'm sure it'll be rewarding at some. You'll feel it. Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, sometimes those people will come up to you after a set and be like, I really thought that was really funny. Like I really but they're still like kind of that the whole time.
I thought about it.
I don't see that often, but I had it like once or twice. Like I used to talk a lot about a relationship that ended, especially when I first started comedy. That was like a big part of what was going on in my life at the time. And I came out like firing off about all this stuff, and it was going okay. And then I did a set in front of a crowd where they all just felt bad. Like I got literal awes supporting me emotionally. And I was like, this is not at all but maybe I got off on the wrong foot, and I just showed up too much of a softie, and I was just doing a little confessional, and they were like, well, this one man show hopefully will end soon because we want a comedy show to happen here. But it's also a risk you run when you talk about those kinds of things. But yeah, some audiences are being too empathetic or not knowing where to place it. Where like you can let it go, like, because I mean I at least can seem empathetic, but I laugh all the time by myself sometimes. It freaks people. That's a freak. I'm not even like looking at my phone or anything.
It's a 50-minute hour. It's like I need these 10 minutes between clients.
Sitting on the train laughing by myself. I couldn't.
The podcast is about. I mean, this podcast is sort of about what are you doing to improve yourself, better yourself. We've sort of been talking about that the whole time. Is there anything specific that jumps out at you when I say that? Or like, what are you working on?
Oh, that I'm working on for myself
personally. Besides trying to be okay with not having Buffalo Wild Wings. One time in a week.
Still gonna get over it. I'm still working on getting over it. But no, I mean, the whole signing up for the half marathon came from maybe my shadow self likes to achieve. And because as I started thinking about signing up, I'm like, like less than 1% of the entire world ever does this.
Right.
You forget that you forget that like less than 1% of those people even give a shit. That's a part. Like no one's gonna be like, oh, this guy died, but he did a half marathon. Everyone's like, wow.
Do you like Mike Birbiglia?
Like I'll list it on my. I don't like. Sometimes I feel like it's like it's too. It's so warm that like maybe I'm just like jealous that I can't do that, but I do like him. He's
incredible at what he does.
Yeah,
I was listening to his podcast, and he said one time, talking about like achievement and art and stuff like that, where he said, he's like, I heard this about like making stuff, where it's like, like if you I can't name and the feeling how like nothing you make matters, how like nothing's gonna be, there's only so many Seinfelds or Sopranos, and he was like, you know what, I can't tell you the name of the guy who got first place in a marathon, but I can tell you everyone I know who's ran a marathon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that do anything for you?
Not at all, but no, I mean, like I didn't even look when I got my numbers. I didn't even look to see who won. Actually, I did. I looked at their time though, and I looked at their time per mile, and I was like, "Geez, how'd they do that?"
That is interesting to think that your impulsiveness is because of some unmet ambition that you're like.
I'm like, I gotta keep achieving something because like I'm, I went through. Got my bachelor's degree. Went to medical school. That was really hard. It actually took like 3 years to get accepted to even go. Graduated medical school. Now I'm licensed, general medical license, almost a board certified, not for later next year, psychiatrist. So like I'm achieving things. But they're like, I'm kind of running out of things in like the academic sphere to like achieve, like boxes to check of achievement. Like I'm doing a fellowship next year. That's kind of prestigious too. Having like subspecialty training. So I'm like, I'll be a highly trained psychiatrist in a year and a half from now. So maybe there's something about me that's like, well, also kind of sometimes making you miserable. Like sometimes you work really long hours, sometimes you're up really late and you're sleep deprived and you're getting emotionally dumped on by a lot of people sometimes. And so sometimes it's not like always the best thing. And so like you got to find something a little more enjoyable to do. And maybe I'm like, well, this comedy thing's going okay, but it could be going better. Can I do something to accomplish something in my life? I feel like I'm running out of things in medicine. Comedy's kind of plateauing, and I have a baby I want to spend time with. I don't have the time to really rise up any faster or achieve more in comedy. So be content there. Well, then what else am I doing?
And instead of really dealing with that, I'm gonna run a half marathon.
Exactly. Let me just absorb. Let me just do something with I'm gonna throw my body at it. But I also was looking for a way, like my wife and I have been talking about this for a while, like just trying to get back into get into a routine of being more mindful of our physical health. So we started just thinking about that when our baby was born last year. That became something on our really in the front of our minds more often. So that's also probably playing a role in making these kinds of decisions. Well, like I can sign up for this thing that's special, but it's also going to help keep me alive and be good for my health. And that, especially early in medical training, you don't have time to take care of yourself. Yeah. So a lot of people like gain weight or they lose a lot of weight because they're not eating. So I was on the weight gain side. So like you got to think about those things. So I've been working on like physical self-improvement, especially because these other things that I want to improve upon, I'm kind of like, well, these things are just kind of, they're going.
Yeah, that is a big thing that I feel. I have ambition and I'm also impatient. And a lot of comedy stuff. Yeah. Like whenever I look back over the last year, I'm like, oh wow, look at you. Yeah. But then as I'm going through this current year, I'm like, why is nothing happen? Why is it so goddamn slow? Yeah. It's so blah blah blah. Like I'm just never satisfied. Yeah. So there is a thing of like, how do you get that? How do you scratch that itch while the things that you want on a more fundamental level are just they're going as fast as they can. Yeah. So you take a sketch writing class and then take a sketch writing class. I'm taking an acting class coming up. Yeah. I'm fucking going to new experiences. I'm going to a music festival with my brother in Barcelona. Cool. It's like, damn. Oh, that's cool. Just fun. This is you. And then you're just filling the time. Yeah. Well, I was talking to a friend of mine too. Like this was like a couple of years ago. A little after my wife and I got married, I had this really weird, dark thought about how I'm like, I'm kind of like, I'm looking forward to being done with training. And so like, I could easily just forget to enjoy the journey going along this and just feel like I'm just killing time day to day. Like I just can't wait for the next day. So that's one more day moving forward. Yeah. And like, that sucks. Like that was a stupid thought. I don't want to hold on to that thought. I want to let that thought go. Like I don't want to perceive my years like that because these are all are the few years we get. And then it became that just went completely out the window. Even just finding out my wife was pregnant, I was like, holy shit, I cannot just kind of watch the clock. Until I get to the next thing. And then, but if you get to the next thing, you're going to find another way to impatiently wait for the years to pass so that thing can happen. Now I just get to enjoy every day because I wake up and then it also spills over into other things that you're doing. Like on weeks that I know I can go out and do a show or do a mic, I'm like, that's awesome. That's exciting. Yeah. But then if the mic gets canceled or something comes up and I can't go, then I have to stop myself from getting really upset about that because I was looking forward to it. Yeah. But that's so getting better from like therapy skills, working on my health, and changing some of the or letting go of some of those like really like kind of gross thoughts like passing time just to have achieved another thing when the corny
it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Sure.
Is the thing that I need to actually focus on and like enjoy each day as much as you can. Some days are just bullshit, but that's
what's crazy. It was like everything you're saying. You're like, I'm trying to get healthy, trying to keep my therapy mind stuff, keep the bad thoughts out, so that I can live longer and enjoy the time I'm living. I mean, that's just at the core. It's like, that's what we should all be. That's what therapy is. That's what we're all trying to do. It's like, hey, you're not here for very long. Yeah. Maybe you should enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm finding the things that are holding me back from that. Yeah. And so, and I've come to learn that some of these things were really getting in the way of it. I'll find new ways to get in my way and just know that realizing the impermanence of some of these thoughts, you don't need to identify with them, because thoughts can be all over the place. Sure. Like, don't think of a purple elephant. There it Pink. Is. So, oh really?
Yeah,
I'm a fuchsia. But but is there any meaning to that? Like, does that mean you're easily manipulated? You can start having those thoughts if you want, and then you can go down that path. But you don't have to go down that path at all. You can be like, oh well, that you tricked me, and then that's that. Boom, got it. Move on.
I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at keeping my thoughts pretty good. I'm good at having a bad thought, indulging it, but knowing that it's not real.
Okay.
See,
I'm jealous of that.
Like if you do something but if you do something that makes me mad, I'll be like, man, fuck Greg, this piece of shit, he's a good guy, but also fuck Greg, though, he shouldn't have did that. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm good at just like being like, I know this isn't true, but I'm just gonna indulge it for a little bit. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. I mean, if you started like tweeting "fuck Greg" over and over again, and at the end of the day you don't tweet, but that second part for me. That part's just
for you. Yeah.
The "fuck Greg" is for the fans,
right? Yeah, exactly. That's like the person
to get our beef
lying about therapy, or telling the truth, unfortunately. But
no, I need to get back on that game, because like this transition, this breakup, all this fucking, it's just been like. Made me bummer, made me low, dude. Not enjoying it, feeling like I am just waiting out the days and the time.
Yeah, which
and
sucks.
I'm like, it fucking. I mean, it's on one hand, it's like, even if you zoom out more, it's like it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. If you zoom out more, it's like, well, part of the journey is counting out the days for the destination. There are those moments for that.
Yeah.
And if you zoom out again, you're in a fucking fishbowl. And that, or whatever. But like, you zoom out, and there are those moments. So I'm like, all right, I have my dip. I need to like start getting out of that.
Right. Like, it's okay crossing off the days in the calendar, because that's all part of it.
Yeah.
So roll with it too. But maybe your intention moving forward when you're crossing off the days isn't like watching the clock. It's just part of the process. I'm crossing out the days because that's what I do.
Yeah. I think a big reason is like, I'm new to New York, so I'm like, every set I do, I'm like, better do good.
Yeah.
And guess what's not fun? Just doing your fucking shit all the time. And with no experimentation or trying something new, or like...
because you're waiting, because you need to find out after that when the next thing's coming. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I'm saying, like, if I do a set, someone's like, hey, come do my show. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I better do good so that everyone there knows I'm funny.
Yeah.
So that if my name comes up again, they'll be like, I remember him. He was funny. I remember him. He was trying some weird shit out and it didn't really work, but whatever.
Yeah.
And so like, it was this trip back to Texas doing Moon Towers. Like, I'm doing that again. Like, there are like some sets where I'm like, I gotta do good. Yeah. But I'm getting to the point where I'm like, man, fuck it, man. Yeah. Just fuck it all.
Yeah.
And that's where the fun of doing this inherently, confronting what's the word?
It's like interaction.
This art
dialogue.
form that is inherently subversive.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from like, let me just do what works. It's like, that's fucking, it's about trying something that you've never done before. No one's ever done before. And fucking having it bomb or having it work. Like, that's the fun of it, not just I'm gonna do what I do. And I'm like, you
get the math of the joke and you deliver it in the tone that on the tape that you watched last time it worked. So gotta keep that up. That sounds like a lot. I like to like fuck around on stage, and sometimes I get too in my head on either side of it. Like I will get too rigid and then get so stressed about doing all the right jokes that I will forget my set and have to like reach for a set list. Other times I'll forget or I won't even think about my set list because I'm just having fun messing around. And but I need to maybe move in more intentionally with being comfortable with doing that. Yeah. I think the other problem I have is like, even being here, I've been here for almost 4 years. I still feel like I need to prove to people that like I can do a good job. Yeah. And I think that it takes away some joy, definitely. It can. And ironically, the way to have the best set is to actually have fun. Right. Because then afterwards you actually feel good and you don't just go home. Yeah, you feel good. The crowd wants to see you feel good, so then they feel good that you're having fun. Yeah, and then everybody's happy. Right. But then you're like, but that's a risk, because what if I'm having fun and then they don't have fun, and then let me just do my joke. I know the jokes were, and it's no one loves that. No, it's bad. But we only got so much time. Yeah, enjoy it. Do it. Only got so many sets. Yeah. This is the end. I gotta go here soon. Oh yeah. You have work to do. I do. I actually have work to do as well. Mostly putting the treadmill back. Yeah. It's a lot of work. I asked for advice at the end from you. Yeah. About the things that we talked about. Just quick little beep bop boops. What's the first thing we talked about? So if you want to try to better understand this pattern in your relationships, a psychodynamic psychotherapist could be someone who can help you dissect it and understand it better. And from there, maybe you can start problem solving. And if you feel like you're not problem solving, find a different therapist. Yeah. Maybe somebody who does like cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy, or some you don't have to specifically pick any of those. I think I happened. The first, I emailed some therapists, and the first one that reached back to me was an old white lady who does psychodynamics. Cool. I talked to her on the phone, and she was like, I can be very challenging. And I'm like, good, because no one else ever fucking has. So I think I found the right old white lady. Yeah, that's who I saw for therapy for like a year and a half. Old white lady? Older white lady, yeah. Who did psychodynamic. Mm-hmm. Joanne? No, I have no idea her name. We talked on the phone. I think she's like British or some shit. Oh, cool. I don't want that sounds kind of fun. I don't want to break HIPAA, but I think she's like British or something. I don't know if it works the other way. But isn't it a client privilege? Doesn't it go both ways? I'm just like, I'm telling my patients, like, by the way, I will kill you and your whole family, or I don't know, that wouldn't work. Telling people this is not right. You're just admitting all kinds of terrible things, and you're like, you can't tell anybody because of doctor-patient privilege. Right. I'm pretty sure. And they're like, no, I can tell. You're just a bad person. Yeah, I can tell that you fucking did you're the Rainy Street Strangler or whatever is going on. Oh yeah, I just heard about that. That's crazy. There's a serial killer in Austin, Texas. Yeah, I mean, there's 8 people have died in the lake. But they all had a cucumber in their asshole. That's what's. I hope not. That's unusual. 8 days apart. Was it that close? I don't know. I think it's been like a year. We did talk about therapy. Still sad. I'm trying to think of other pieces of advice to ask about. Advice on emotional regulation. Give me a call when you read that. You find a good Jungian book. That's my advice. I can give you. I read some Jungian relationship books that were. The problem with Jungian books is they're not grounded. It's just like, imagine like a fuck, and you're like, how is this relevant to anything? It's hard. I read these relationship books that grounded in the idea of a relationship. I see. So I was able to be like, oh, okay, and then like it ends with like a nice little powerful flourish of poetic Jungian language, and I'm like, okay, I can tell you that one of them is called the Eden Project. Okay.
And one of them, this was a Buddhist Jungian book, was called Love Between Equals.
Okay.
We read those books. Now, don't expect them to fix your relationship, because it doesn't.
Okay.
But I learned a lot.
So emotional regulation. So part of it, or a big chunk of it, is one, when you start to feel these intense emotions, kind of pause almost in like a mindfulness meditation way. Give yourself a minute to think about what's going on and why. Like, why am I so worked up?
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself a minute to think through the thoughts and feelings that are happening, and kind of just like let those go. Sometimes just taking it and looking at it and realizing the absurdity of it is really valuable. Sometimes people, like at acceptance and commitment therapy, folks will tell you to like take the thought that's really driving your emotions up to that intensity level and sing it back to yourself to the tune of Happy Birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people to do it to the tune of Camptown Races, because I think that's a funnier song.
What song is that?
Camptown Races. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. And then lastly, just what's some advice on just how to, because I asked you these advice, and I want to learn what you're doing so that I can beat you.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Like, how do I beat Greg?
Yeah.
I was talking to Harrison. He was like, do you know Dr. Greg? And I was like, no. He's like, oh, Greg, he's the cop. I'm like, you're talking about Greg? He's like, yeah, I call him Dr. Greg.
He never, I guess, maybe he does call me Dr. Greg. I don't know. You saw him before he left? Or no, maybe
I saw him at the lodge the other day. Yeah.
Okay, cool. But how do you defeat me?
How do I defeat Dr. Greg?
Place at least second to last in a half marathon. Because then you would have beaten me. Also, be happy and achieve your dreams, and I'll find a way to think it's a slight against me.
Anyone else is doing well?
Yeah.
Fuck you, man.
Yeah. I can't believe you did that. Like, did you think about me in any of those moments?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do it that way.
Yeah, we all got a monster in us. It's fine.
Yeah.
Anything you want to tell people what you're up to?
Not a whole lot. Just I'm around. If you're a booker, I'm nice and I'm funny. I do 10 to 20 minute sets.
If you need a therapy, what's your website so they can get some hot clients?
You can go to University of Austin, Texas.edu and search my name, Dr. Greg. Actually, it's not helpful.
He got the pills.
It's not helpful.
He got the meds too.
I do. Well, I don't have them on me.
You got the prescription.
It's not allowed.
Bad, dude. All right. Well, I appreciate you being on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Great talking to you.
Good times.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.